Stand by for broadcast.
You're listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations.
Hello, I'm Flight Lieutenant Peter Lisney, and in this episode we take a flight to Oman on exercise Magic Carpet. We'll also reheat a few stories, just in case you missed them. But first, see if you can identify this noise. Find out if you're right at the end of this episode. Now, Magic Carpet is an annual exercise that allows personnel from the RAF and Royal Air Force of Oman to work, train and socialise together. This year, they were also joined by the Qatar Emiri Air Force. We asked our correspondent, Flight Lieutenant Ronan Carey, to find out what went on both in the air and on the ground.
Expecting some 12 Squadron Typhoons to start with, followed by some of the RAF of Oman aircraft, and then finishing off with some 2 Squadron.
Flash, directed on target destroyed.
And so the ability to drop a live weapon, which is absolutely essential to preparation for going on operations, has been very good.
Seats, life jackets are behind your backs. For all you guys down the side, it's underneath the seat. Standard yellow life jacket you get on any airline, fits it exactly the same. Tie it, and just remember, don't inflate until you're outside the aircraft.
My name's Flight Lieutenant Ronan Carey, and I'm the media officer for exercise Magic Carpet. I'm currently sitting on a C-17 at RAF Bryce Norton, awaiting departure for an 8-hour flight to the Middle East. Exercise Magic Carpet is a bilateral exercise between the Royal Air Force and the Omani Air Force, held at Thumrait Air Base in southern Oman for 2 weeks in November. This year is slightly different in that we are inviting the Qatari Air Force to join us on the exercise.
I'm Wing Commander Chris Wright, Officer Commanding 12 Squadron. 12 Squadron have deployed here from RAF Coningsby, alongside our sister squadron from RAF Lossiemouth, number 2 Army Cooperation Squadron. But it's not just Typhoon here. We also have Voyager deployed, providing air-to-air refuelling capability, Joint Terminal Attack Controllers out on the ground who are coordinating air-to-surface fires with the live weapons that we're delivering. And then here at Thumrait we have all the host of trades and branches that come together to make this deployment. Alongside our colleagues in Oman, we will be training across air-to-air and air-to-ground training, and it's all aimed at really just integrating forces and learning how to work better with our partners in a new environment.
Good morning. Can I have your rank and surname, please?
Good morning. It's Squadron Leader Davis. I'm the exercise physiotherapist. So my role primarily is to look after the aircrew, but also the accompanying packs that come out to support the aircrew and support the exercise. So I'm here to look after everybody.
And the flying programme has started this morning. Did you have any involvement with the pilots prior to that, or is it post flying that you'll be engaged with them?
I'm fortunate and I know some of the pilots from a previous exercise, which is always quite useful. I am here for when they need me. They will have done build-up training with Physio. Most of them may at some stage have come to visit us through their career, so they're aware of the physio services that we provide. But I'm here for when they engage, if they have a discussion, if they have a niggle, they want to stop it turning into a pain. I'm here to help with that sort of thing, and also with any prevention ideas as well, which they will have done pre-exercise. So as a physiotherapist, our role doesn't start when we arrive on the exercise. It will have started years and years ago during their training to help them through career, and we are there to support them through their entire career. And obviously out on exercise they're going through a little bit more stress and increased workloads and different conditions. We want to keep them flying and keep them at the top of their game.
Indeed. And in terms of then the kit that you had to bring out, what would that entail?
Your physiotherapist can deal with all sorts of injuries and pains, not just those that guys may have experienced, the pilots might have experienced in the combat sortie, but also that someone may have tripped over on site. They could have had an injury through doing exercise, potentially, in the gym, or anything from an everyday injury that you would go and see a physio with. So I have got quite a lot of kit.
And is this your first time on Exercise Magic Carpet, and have you been on other exercises and operations?
It's my first time on Exercise Magic Carpet, so it's great to be involved in going somewhere different. I've been fortunate to have been in the military system for a while, so I've had the opportunity to go away on a few exercises previously, which is great because it gives you an idea of what to expect, what to ensure is packed to support everybody for the exercise, and helps us also offer experience and development to people who it may be their first time.
You're a reservist, so tell me a little bit about how you've come into Exercise Magic Carpet and into the RAF.
Okay. I've been a reservist for coming up to about 25 years now. Initially with the Army in Royal Signals, before I had the opportunity when the physiotherapy branch opened for the RAF to transfer over in 2011. And I was fortunate to be able to be the first reserve physiotherapist that the RAF introduced, and the first reserve physiotherapist to go on an overseas exercise. But now we've got the opportunity for the reservists to be more embedded in, and they've had more opportunities for most of our reserve physio cadre to actually be able to go out and exercise now, which is a great opportunity for us.
Flight Lieutenant Walsh. So on Exercise Magic Carpet, we're here supporting the Typhoons as a deployed meteorologist. So I'm part of the mobile Met unit. So we do the weather briefings for the Typhoons before they go flying. Essentially today, absolutely fine out here in Oman, but sometimes we have issues with crosswinds and fog, particularly in the mornings. So that's why I'm here.
Obviously the weather out here has been pretty standard, but what has been your biggest challenge while you've been working in Oman?
Notwithstanding the early mornings, so first brief is 5:30 in the morning, so we're up at the crack of sparrows at 4:30 most mornings. I think the biggest challenge is just getting the fog right and the clearance. I suppose some of the early sorties go on pretty early, so making sure that's out of the way is a big challenge for us guys out here.
And is this your first deployment on Exercise Magic Carpet?
It's actually the second time I've been out here. I was out here in January 2016, which is slightly different weather, but essentially still hot and sunny on the whole, and a lot nicer than be back in the UK.
And where else have you been deployed over the last few years?
Several places. Been on Optoral in Afghanistan, went to Estonia with the air policing. As a unit, we're pretty good at being able to get out and about, so it's a good unit to be in to deploy.
Flight Lieutenant Francis, OC Operations and Training Flights and Squadron 2IC at Free Mobile Catering Squadron.
And I'm Sergeant Andrew Hollingsworth, and I am at 3MCS in Ops and Planning.
Tell me a little bit about your roles.
So my role in the squadron is essentially to look after the guys, make sure they get out the door in good order. So covering both the operation side is probably the primary aim of my job, so making sure that when we get tasks in, they're resourced appropriately, both for personnel and equipment, making sure that all of our timelines are met, that we go out and get on to exercise or operations on time and in good order to meet the needs of the customer. And then with my sort of training hat on, I also look after the provision of specialist training to the whole of Trade Group 19. So the majority of people working in messes for most of their careers, when they come to the squadron or they deploy out in support of us, we need to make sure they're qualified in all of our deployable kit. So I make sure the provision of that training is there across the whole of the trade group.
Sergeant, just tell me a little bit about your role.
So my role on Ops and Planning, I'm the deck commander here on Magic Carpets for 3MCS. My role basically comes through from the ops room. I give surety to the OC Ops and Training that all tasking is met and we're able to feed for whatever requirements it may be, whether it be out operations here or operations and exercises in the UK, from anything from a 50-man site up to a 2,000-man site.
Catering is in the name of 3 Mobile Catering Squadron, but it's not just catering. People think of chefs and the food and the servery, but it's a lot more than that.
We provide the free functions on free MCS. Obviously, the catering, the one everyone knows us for, field kitchens, whether we're working here in a well-founded base or whether we're out in the tents, nice built field kitchen using all of that sort of specialist equipment. And the two other services we offer are what's known as the operational hygiene system, which is essentially a deployable laundry facility. So packs down into a 20-foot ISO container. Essentially, you can process 200 bags of laundry a day. As you can imagine, if you're going somewhere completely austere, that capability comes in handy quite quickly, lest everyone start to give off a rather grim smell. So there is that. Great bit of kit. We have 2 on the squadron, and we can get more if needed. All of our kit's held at very high readiness, so as you can imagine, we like to go places at very short notice. The other function we offer is accommodation management. So this is where it's a bit interesting for us in that it's a function that sort of blurs the line between A1 and A4. But what we provide, especially through our steward cadre, is that ability to act impartial of everyone on the detachment. As we all know, everyone is naturally inclined to try and get the best deal for themselves. And especially when you bring in a lot of different sporadic force elements. So on this exercise, obviously, we have 2 flying squadrons, 3 if you include the Voyager. We've then got engineers, we've got armourers, we have movers, drivers, everyone who's trying to work these different shift patterns that don't necessarily tie in with everyone else. Everyone's got their own different requirements, their own set of rules that they have to work to. So the purpose of the accommodation manager, he comes in, he takes all of that information, essentially apportions out to everyone so that everyone gets a fair shout of what's available, but more importantly, it keeps them compliant with the individual rules and regulations they have to adhere to make sure they're safe to operate either an aircraft, a vehicle, or any other role they undertake on the detachment.
So talking specifically about Exercise Magic Carpet, the flying programme has been going on for just over a week. Some people have been here for a lot longer than that, and some will be here for a lot longer than the end of this week when the flying programme finishes. What does it take to feed the over 300 personnel that we've had here? So
if I take it back to, say, 3-4 months before the exercise, we'll go through an on-site recce where we'd come out and plan to see what the requirements are. We'd then ask about numbers, etc. I'd then return from a recce, I'd produce a statement of requirement, and that would be everything that I need from all the supporting agencies, whether it be 5001, what I need from the project officer, as in a detailed feeding plan for the numbers, what are their requirements, whether they need 3 meals a day, 4 meals a day, or do they need an operational hygiene system. Once that's all compiled, that's then sent off to the project officer, who then instigates everything that I've asked for vehicles to support that need down on the ground, be it skips, etc. Then we'll deploy out to come and set up the facility. So we arrived here on the 18th, myself, Flight Lieutenant Francis, and the accommodation manager, just to check that everything that we'd asked for was in place before we got our main party at 3MCS that came in, set up the kitchen, started all the preps to start feeding. On that, we'd be looking at 60% composite rations with a 40% supplement of fresh, so we can facilitate feeding all the guys. On that, there's a lot of tricky points to that, because there's a 10-day lead time that we have with the eco logbook in the UK, and a 7-day lead time for our fresh ingredients. So numbers are very, very important to us that we're linking them to the project officer. So
tell me about that. So for those that don't know, composite rations mean what while we're here on the exercise?
So you get the 24-hour ration for an individual that could be deployed out on the ground. That is basically, it's a man-made, high-calorie ingredient that can be held for a long period of time, so it's got like a 2-year shelf life. So a lot of it is processed, so go through the bottom line and cook with the tin cans, all that sort of stuff. What we use as chefs is a variation of that. It's a 10-man ration box, so we can feed 10 people for 24 hours out of that one box. So for example, I've ordered 15 pallets to come out here. That was 5,000 individual rations for the guys to feed. So I had the assurity that when I arrived here, if my fresh supply line didn't get up and set, I could start feeding from day one, ensuring that there was 4 meals a day for the troops.
Flight Lieutenant Francis, How do you deal with the varying numbers coming in? So at different meal times, there are smaller or larger groups that might come in, and particularly the evening shift meal, which is the late meals. How do you plan for that?
So I think for us on the planning, flexibility is key. Flexibility from our staff in particular. We understand, flying programs change, engineering schedules change. So what we always ask from our customer, and that's ultimately who we're here to support, is to give us as much notice as possible. So thankfully, people have been coming to us saying, we have a shift on, or increase numbers tonight, or reduce numbers, so we can try and aim off of that. We get that notice probably about 4 or 5 hours before the duty supper goes on, if we're lucky. Obviously things are always subject to change. In terms of how that impacts the prep, is that our food is actually prepped sort of 24 hours in advance. So when you come in and see the chefs working, they're not necessarily making that day's lunch, they're probably working on tomorrow's. So when it is time to put a meal up, the guys can be quite reactive because all the stuff is there and good to go. And again, the guys in the kitchen are incredibly flexible. If they know they've got 50 to 60 coming through, they'll put something up on the servery, so some good batch feeding. Actually, if they get told there's only 1 or 2 coming in, they'll actually offer sort of an a la carte service so that the guys who are staying on nights and not necessarily having the best time of it can get looked after. But yeah, as always, flexibility is key.
So I know there's never a normal day in any part of the RAF, but certainly within 3MCS. But can you talk me through 24 hours of working here in trap camping on MCS?
A typical day for a chef. An early shift will probably turn to about 0300 hours in the morning, then they'll be in the DFAT for 0400 to facilitate an early breakfast, because obviously they've got to prep that breakfast to get the servery up for the guys that are getting down on the flight line for 0600. Then straight after that they'll move then onto the lunch prep to facilitate 323. That'll go up at 11:30 till 1:30. But obviously people that come through only see the servery. Once that's done, they then bring that down and they'll work further 2 to 3 hours, then cleaning down, making sure all the due diligence has been out correctly, giving me a surety. It will come to me, then I'll check that off and make sure that that's all tickety-boo and up to scratch. And then, after a 12-hour shift, that's then done for the day. The late shift will then come in. They'll turn to get a bit of a lie-in about 0900 into the DFAT for 1000. Work through, assist for the first meal with lunch if needed to help with the batch cooking and the influx of people coming through. Then their main attentions then turn to the evening meal, which is where we get the people from suppers will come in for their first, if you will, like breakfast meal for the supper guys, but it's the evening meal for the day shift. Then they'll do the evening meal, and that comes down about 1900, and then again they'll go down into the clean down procedure. Duty cook details will get written by the JNCO that's on in charge of that shift to ensure that the duty cook is doing the prep for the next day. There's an overlap there with the duty cook. He'll come in about 1700, and he'll work through till 5 in the morning. So I've got a full 24-hour kitchen. He'll get the duty detail off the JNCO that was on the late shift. He'll sign to say that he's taken over the kitchen, do a full handover takeover, and then he's straight into his prep in its entirety for the lunch meal. Whether they need any fish cakes making, like we had on today, the other day they made beef balls. So there's a lot of prep and a lot of man hours that go into making everything, because as you've seen on our capability standards, you come in through the DFAC, everything's in a box and it all needs either rehydrating or there's something that needs to be done with it to make it edible for people to eat, and with the fresh ingredients, so everything is made fresh here, nothing's bought in, so it's quite labour intensive, and that's pretty much full 24 hours. So 0500, he'll put the breakfast up, the early shift take over from him, and it all starts again for the next day.
Lieutenant.
I was going to say, throw into that, then obviously that's not just for the people going on the servery, then throw in that we get requests for packed meals for those that can't make lunch. So your guy on nights is not just sort of, he hasn't got an easy time of it, he's got potential sort of, 200 sandwiches to make to get ready to be collected the next day. Throughout the day, we also have our accommodation manager who works a standard day shift, and obviously he's dealing with the niggles and gripes of the 300 people who are obviously out here living in some not bad, but obviously not always necessarily the greatest accommodation. So a lot of moving parts that keeps busy throughout the day.
Tonight, we're here, it's Tuesday night of the second week, and you've had a slightly different request for catering tonight. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so traditionally on a magic carpet, we provide an exchange dinner between us and our Omani counterparts. This year, obviously, we also have our Qatari counterparts coming in from 12 Squadron. So traditionally, 3MCS get asked to facilitate that. So we've already had, the Omanis have had our staff over to eat with them in their mess, and now we're going to have them over with us. So tonight we're provisioning for 130 personnel, split 50-50 between sort of Brits and Omani contingent. And it's just to have them over sort of as a show of thanks, a bit of a chance to do that engagement side of the house. And actually, from our perspective, a chance to show off. As much as, we pride ourselves on the food that goes out there in the circuit every day, and thankfully we're getting far and larger compliments as to what it is we're delivering. When it comes to something like a function, it's when the chefs really get a chance to show up and they can show off something a bit special. We are here to engage with the Omanis. We might as well have a bit of fun with it whilst we can and, push the boat out.
It's the second week of Exercise Magic Carpet here in Oman. And over the last 10 days, there's been plenty of air-to-air and air-to-ground sorties flown by the Typhoons and the Voyager of the RAF, supported by our Omani colleagues with their Typhoons and their F-16s.
We'll be doing the air-to-air refueling with the fast jets this morning. We'll be looking to start engines in the next 5 minutes and then getting airborne off the Northerly runway here to go and meet up with a load of Typhoons to give fuel. So expecting some 12 Squadron Typhoons to start with, followed by some of the RAF of Oman aircraft, and then finishing off with some 2 Squadron. Should be fairly short and sharp today, hopefully. We think we'll be airborne for about 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Flight Sergeant Peach. I'm the Mission System Operator, or MSO for short, which is part of the normal crew for an air-to-air refueling sortie of the 2 pilots and the MSO.
And what's your work been like here on Exercise Magic Carpet?
It's been very enjoyable. There's been a mixture of tasking for being good refueling the Omanis, and it's just quite a pleasant atmosphere to be working in, really.
So tell me a little bit about you've been with 101 Squadron on Voyager for how long?
About 5 years.
And tell me a little bit about your RAF history before that.
Okay, I joined the Air Force in 1987 as a direct entry flight engineer when there were such things, and my first 15 years were spent on flying C-130Ks, the old Hercules, which was great fun. And in 2000, I moved across to the TriStar, again as a flight engineer, which was a great job while it lasted, and I was there right until the end when the Voyager came into service and replaced the TriStar.
And what have you found most interesting about your time on Exercise Magic Carpet here in Oman?
It harks back to the good old days when we'd go away. It's a whole different random bunch of people from the Air Force. Everybody's in the same boat, and it's really nice that everybody's so friendly and all working together for a common cause.
Target is the southernmost of 5 technical vehicles simulated by straight marker panels. It is contained within a C-shape of 3 conjoined high features that opens to the northeast. It is on the southern bank of a wadi running east to west, and it is on the southwest corner of Off-Box Whiskey. Reference will be the southernmost high feature of that C-shaped conjoined high feature, with target being 50 metres north of reference. End of enhanced target description.
Vampire 2 is contact 5 simulated vehicle and tally target the southernmost vehicle.
Roger, Vampire 2, push when ready.
Vampire 2, push when ready.
I'm sat with one of the 2 Squadron Typhoon pilots here today. I'd like to ask you, on Exercise Magic Carpet, what's it like flying in the environment around Sumray and over Oman?
It represents a really quite a challenge, and it's a great opportunity. Flying in the UK, the weather conditions are sometimes not particularly conducive to going flying, and certainly doing a lot of the type of training that we require to go on operations. And so flying out here much more closely represents that environment. We can operate in the heat, in the associated visual illusions of being in the desert and over very hot terrain, and also quite featureless terrain. But similarly, being able to see the ground from any height because of the good weather and able to use the equipment that we've got on the aeroplane represents a really good training opportunity for us.
So flying a fast jet is always challenging, but are there particular challenges flying on Exercise Magic Carpet?
I think one of the biggest challenges is probably working in a hotter environment. We wear a lot of kit as pilots which is designed to protect us in the cockpit, which is a naturally hostile environment, designed to protect us against the forces of G. That equipment is relatively heavy to wear and it's full body coverage. And so when you are walking out to the aircraft, preparing the aircraft for flight, going through the initial checks that you have to do, and the temperature increases quite rapidly with pan temperatures of about 45 degrees. So sitting in that environment is uncomfortable and not something we're used to, but it is something that you have to be prepared for when you go on operations in operating in climates similar to this. That's definitely one of the biggest challenges.
We're on the last day of the flying programme today. Looking back over the last couple of weeks, is there a particular highlight of your time flying on Magic Carpet?
Two particular highlights stand out for me, one of which is getting the opportunity to release live weapons on a target controlled by a JTAC.
Vampire 2, splash, direct on target destroyed.
It's an opportunity that we seldom get in the UK because of the lack of availability of ranges, whereas here ranges are much more freely available, and so the ability to drop a live weapon, which is absolutely essential to preparation for going on operations, has been very good. But also the opportunity to work with other nations like the Royal Air Force of Oman, with whom I haven't worked before, and combine with them in larger force element exercises has been really enjoyable, and will definitely be a couple of things that I'll go back with and remember fondly.
Just one final question. We don't just pack a Typhoon up into the back of an aircraft to get it home. How are you getting yourself and your aircraft home from this exercise?
You're absolutely right. It is quite an operation to fly many thousands of miles back to the UK. Involves a lot of detailed preparation and planning on the part of an air-to-air refuelling aircraft, the Voyager, that will escort the Typhoons back, and will fly in a series of regular hops of about 5 to 6 hours in terms of time, stopping off on the way and refuelling all the way. Quite a long sortie, and actually a very enjoyable aspect of it for us, because although you are sitting in an uncomfortable environment for a long period of time, you often get to fly over areas that you would seldom see, such as the broad expanse of desert in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the Mediterranean. And so although it represents another big challenge, it's another highlight of the exercise and deployment.
This is Reheat on Inside Air, and with your latest RAF news, I'm AC Ben Russell. The RAF has landed a Guinness World Record after completing the first ever flight powered solely by synthetic fuel. The record was set at Cotswold Airport and was achieved in partnership with Zero Petroleum. The fuel's made by combining hydrogen extracted from water and carbon from carbon dioxide, and the only byproduct is oxygen. Well, Group Captain Willie Hackett was at the controls and says the fuel could be a real game changer.
Although I knew there was this revolutionary new fuel in the aeroplane, I could not tell the difference. The aeroplane performed flawlessly, the engine did, and it was a dream to fly.
In other news, an extra 240 veterans and service leavers are being offered the chance to qualify as HGV drivers for free. It's part of a government drive to boost job prospects in Civvy Street and help ease the UK's shortage of lorry drivers. The scheme's set to expand further over the coming year, with the total number of training slots expected to triple. And England may have enjoyed a triumphant 5-0 win over Albania in their World Cup qualifier at Wembley, but it wasn't the only stellar performance of the night. Also making an appearance under the floodlights was Royal Air Force musician Corporal Malcolm Knapp, who had the honour of sounding the last post in front of more than 80,000 fans as part of a pre-kick-off remembrance service. And in sport, Benson and Bulmer walked away with the silverware from this year's hotly contested RAF Festival of Football. A field of 30 five-a-side teams battled it out at Shrewsbury Town's Montgomery Waters Meadow Ground. Benson pipped Wittering 2-1 in the cup event, while Bulmer took the plate with a 3-1 win over Witton B. And that's Reheat on Inside Air.
I'm SAC Simon Ross with this episode's Name That Noise. That was the sound of an AED, or Automated External Defibrillator. All RAF personnel are trained in first aid, including how to effectively perform CPR, or cardiopulmonary resuscitation. During a cardiac arrest, the heart stops pumping blood around the body, causing the individual to stop breathing or stop breathing normally. In addition to CPR, an AED can be used to significantly improve chances of survival. Personnel within the RAF medical services provide essential medical support, responding to medical emergencies and providing airfield crash cover on stations in the UK, whilst on operations, and also on exercises. RAF medics can also train as paramedics, providing a full range of pre-hospital emergency care in military environments.
That's all for this episode of Inside Air. Please give us a review and subscribe on your favourite podcast app, and join us again soon.
You've been listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations. If you're serving in the RAF and have a story for us, please speak to your unit media and communications officer. Inside Air is written and produced for the Royal Air Force by RAF Media Reserves.